Continuing on with the book I've written, Chapter 4. Sunday morning dawned with a transcribable symphony. She had slept soundly, and the open window in her bedroom allowed for the harmonious sonnets of chirping and chattering from feathered and furry creatures in the nearby trees. It was a beautiful morning. She loved Sundays. They were a gift you could open slowly to enjoy the blessings of life. You didn't have to do some of the mundane things like the work week brought. Oh, she loved her work. Whatever she had chosen, it was always that way. She was able to put herself into it and bring from it something good. It's just that it wasn't always that easy to use your own creative ideas and desires when you work for someone else. She had often thought of starting her own business. It just seemed like that might interfere with the many things she liked to do. Being an art professor allowed her the freedom to continue her own art. That was something she knew was going to be good. For many years, Trish had missed painting and drawing. She knew it was important to whom she was as a person. She was very happy being in a position to get paid and help promote something near to her heart. Coming downstairs, she remembered that she was going to meet Michael Johns for lunch this afternoon. She would come home right after church and change into something casual. She liked to dress up for church, but she wanted to relax this afternoon, dining and enjoying herself. After lunch, she had already thought of just kicking back with a good book. She wasn't sure if Michael had a bigger reason than just getting to know each other or if that was the gist of the get-together. She would just have to see. She had no reason to believe Michael had ulterior motives. This was probably just a friendly lunch. The church she had decided to attend was non-denominational. The pastor was generally friendly, and she enjoyed the service. Afterwards, she said hello to a couple of people and went home to change, and then hurried to the restaurant to meet Michael for lunch. Trish loved going out to eat. She always had. Going out to dine was so nice, to be able to sit in a beautiful space and look over different choices of food to eat and have someone bring them to you and then clean up. Wow, what could be nicer? Being able to enjoy the finer aspects of life was a joy to Trish. Even as a child, she had liked nice things and had noticed a difference in quality. She loved this, but was never sure if it was something to be glad about or if she was being too picky and judgmental of people and material stuff. She wasn't sure to this day, but she did know that she was happier in visually nice settings. Trish entered the cafe and noticed Michael at a booth across from the counter right away. He stood up to greet her and cupped her hand with his in a friendly handshake, and they sat down. "Well," said Michael, "I'm glad we could get together again. I'd planned on talking to you Friday night, but I got involved in a conversation that took a few unexpected narrow curves, I'm afraid. The president of Winston is implementing some new policies, and we don't see eye to eye on everything. I've been teaching at the school for the past 14 years, and I guess I'm reluctant to change," he said. "Oh," said Trish empathetically, "I do understand. Sometimes the best intentions go awry. Why don't we start today to get acquainted and let Friday be done with? I did manage to talk with several of the staff, and I know I'll get along very well when I get going with teaching my classes. I'm looking forward to tomorrow and meeting with the students. I think it will be a good session. Summer offers so much to get done, and I'm excited to begin." Michael nodded his agreement, and they ordered lunch. Later that evening, as Trish was relaxing on the porch, she reflected on the few days since she had arrived here in Randall, Wisconsin. She had met several people and moved into her new apartment, organized her desk at the office in the college, and explored a bit of the town. All in all, she felt good about her new beginning and looked forward to what was to come. Chapter 5. Monday at school had gone very well. Trish had 3 classes that day. The summer session was shorter in length, but each class packed a bigger number of projects into the season. Her students seemed glad to be there, and she was eager to get to know them better. The first assignment would be to set up a still life and put artificial light on one half of the composition to study color values. Trish remembered doing this herself many years back. She had loved the way the light gave you a clear understanding of how to make the same color lighter or darker without using too much white or black paint. She was looking forward to her students' discovery of this information and how it would enlighten their work. Art was so interesting in the different ways it helped to understand other aspects of life. Trish decided to go out for a walk as the evening was so beautiful. She grabbed her cell phone on her way out so she could make a couple of calls to friends in Florida while she was walking. It was always nice to be able to talk to someone as she got her exercise. The time went much faster. Just as she was going to dial her friend Sophie, her phone rang. "Hello," she answered. "Marianne, how wonderful to hear your voice. How are you?" Trish asked. Marianne was doing great, and Trish talked with her for several minutes as she walked in her neighborhood. Marianne was Trish's skincare consultant, and she was calling to tell Trish of some of the newest products out. Trish had been a faithful customer for the last few years, and they had developed a great friendship, too. Marianne was another artist friend, also, although she had put her work on hold while she developed her cosmetic business. Marianne was very knowledgeable about her products, and Trish appreciated the helpfulness to be able to purchase the best items for beautiful skin. They said goodbye, and Marianne would send Trish her order. Marianne was a very good businesswoman. Trish was glad they'd gotten to know one another and that they kept in touch. Trish tried her friend Sophie. The phone rang several times before it went to voicemail. Trish left a short message and continued with her walk. Trish's phone rang again as she rounded the corner from her house onto a beautiful street lined with oaks seeming almost as tall as the California redwoods. "Hello," answered Trish. "Marianne, hi, what's up?" In a few moments, Trish had the details of Marianne's call. Marianne was wondering if Trish could help her solve a dilemma that had been plaguing her for some time. She wanted to do her art, but she was torn between building her cosmetics business to the volume she needed to support herself. She had wanted to become a leader in her business for so many years now, and it had not happened. Marianne said that she trusted Trish's thought, and she just wanted some feedback. "Oh, Marianne, I'm so honored that you have asked for my opinion. I don't know your business like you do, but I do think you're very good at it. One thing that pops into my mind as we talk is that since you've wanted something so long and it hasn't happened, there may be a couple of things to look at. One is, do you really want this? And two, are you doing what you can to make it happen on a consistent basis?" Marianne told Trish that she had wanted for so many years to be a leader in the company, but she wasn't used to having the mindset that she could do something so great. She felt that she had what it takes, she just didn't or wasn't used to such a great amount of success for herself. Trish agreed with Marianne that this was a very difficult place to be. Knowing that you could accomplish something, but not really being able to imagine yourself as so successful, was a conundrum. Marianne told Trish she felt like crying. It was such a tender spot for her, and she thought maybe an objective approach would help. "Marianne, I think we should pray about this and definitely keep sharing our time of talking with each other. Also, do some art today. You're such a wonderful artist, and I think that it is important to honor that part of yourself. I say this because I too had put my art aside, and now that I'm teaching, I have the time and it is what I do. It is a good place to be, I'm thinking, for me, and that's why I say to you to be true to your love of what you have inside of you." Trish paused, and Marianne answered that yes, she would paint today. She'd been wanting to, but always said when she accomplished this or that, and we all know how that goes. They said goodbye, and they would talk again soon. Trish thought about what Marianne had told her and realized that it is those elusive dreams that keep us going forward, but we have to be careful we do not lose who we are as we continue to pursue them. What she was thinking was that when you gave up something so much a part of yourself like art and said, "Okay, when I accomplish this, then I will allow myself to paint," that was not such a good idea. It was only allowing a part of yourself then to be involved in accomplishing your dream. Did that make sense? Yes, it did. Had she done the same thing by putting her art to the side for so many years too? Trish was very glad Marianne had called. Today there were lots of different activities and choices of this and that to keep us from calling others and building those relationships with others. It was easy to say, "I'll deal with this later," or "I'll call her tomorrow," and then life, and no phone conversations, and no building of friendships. Trish had been there, and then wondered when she wanted to talk to someone who would care, and who could she talk to. That is when she decided to take the bull by the horns, so to speak, and be the one, if need be, to make the first move. So far, she was very surprised of the response of those who'd called back. It was not a very big number. Trish figured that it was our lifestyle today. So many other choices than friendships. Trish was convinced that friendship mattered, and so she continued to call and keep up with those she knew and met and continued to meet new people. She did not ever want to be in that space of not knowing if anyone cared when she needed to talk to someone. Chapter 6. Mary Ann lived in sunny Florida. She loved living here. She had moved from Iowa 10 years ago, and boy was she glad. She loved the winters in Florida, of course, but she also loved the summers and all the seasons. Some said they couldn't see any seasons, just one type of weather all year long. This wasn't really true. Granted, the seasons weren't as pronounced as in the Midwest, but they were still called winter, spring, summer, and fall here in Florida. The people were great too. They were from many different states as well as countries, and of course, visitors all the time. In the winter, many were here from Canada every year. It was their winter home. Many Floridians nicknamed them snowbirds, but Mary Ann simply called them winter people. She felt it was wonderful to have access to so many friends from different lands. Mary Ann missed Trish. She wished Trish was still here, but she understood Trish's need to move and take on a different life. Trish would be a wonderful art teacher. "I'm so glad I called Trish," said Mary Ann to herself. "I needed to talk about my skincare business, and I trust Trish's opinion and her perspective. We've gotten to know each other pretty well these last few years. What is best for me? I think that I should bite the bullet, so to speak, and go for leadership. I was listening to a tape today, and the director said it really all happens in about 2 weeks. I can keep waiting until everything is set in place, which really never seems to happen, or I can go for it, give it my all, my very best, and see if I can make it happen, with God's help, of course." Today, when I was listening to a recording, the director said that she was talking to some women about the definition of a calling. They said, a calling is something that doesn't go away. It's always there. It keeps coming back up. Well, that's how it's been for me. From the first event I went to when I saw the director leading the show, I said, I can do that, and I want that. The dream was born in my heart at that moment. For so many years, I just wanted it from afar. I was so unused to having that kind of success. In a way, I still am. I have decided, though, that it is my time to have that kind of success. Am I scared? You bet I am. I'll be okay, though. God is with me. Mary Ann decided on some smaller goals to help her meet the bigger goal, which was going to be committing to a date to debut for leadership. It was time. Okay. Now to the work. Chapter 7. Trish was grateful to lend an ear to Mary Ann. Sometimes that's all one needed, an ear. Someone who cared and was willing to support whatever their friend's dream entailed. That is what mattered. Having someone to share with is so important, thought Trish. She was glad she was open to making friends. There'd been many years when flying solo had been the rule for Trish. Maybe after her husband died, that was the hardest time to be around others, especially those who were couples. It seemed as though the time she was around them, she missed her husband the most. They had known each other for many years. It was a difficult situation to get over. I guess, thought Trish, getting over it isn't really the situation. I have so many great memories, and if I cry now and again and feel sad, that's okay. After all, isn't grieving a process, and the process is ongoing? Of course, that doesn't mean I'm going to be thinking and dealing with losing him all the time. It just means some days I may feel sad or think of times we laughed or were upset with one another. There are no rules when it comes to a relationship that ends abruptly because someone dies. There may be lots of feelings that come up at different times, and that's okay. Trish knew a lot about feelings now. She had worked on getting in touch with what she was feeling during a crisis with her friend Suzanne. Suzanne had worked through a major eating disorder and had taught Trish quite a lot. Suzanne had told Trish of the great difficulty finding help for her eating disorder, anorexia. It had been at a time when the professionals thought it was mostly for young girls. They did not have enough research to realize the implications of eating disorders can be men or women, boys and girls, all ages. Suzanne was a great friend to Trish. Trish thought maybe Mary Ann and Suzanne could meet sometime. They would probably enjoy each other, and another friendship would begin. Trish had talked to Mary Ann again after their last conversation. It was another great time of sharing. Marianne told Trish of her insight into how her own calling to be a director in her company had actually included her siblings and family. She'd not realized this for many years, but once she did, it changed another picture for her. She saw that they had each played a very important role in the beginning of what was so ultimately to be her calling in life. Marianne had explained that her brother's wife, Julie, had started her own skincare business and sent a packet of information regarding the business to her sister-in-law back in the Midwest. Marianne had been over at her mother's house to pick up her little daughter. Marianne saw the packet and asked her mom about it. Her mom said that Julie had sent it to Karen, Marianne's sister. Karen had been in sales before and was currently looking for another job. Karen hadn't even opened the package. She didn't care about it. Marianne's mother kept telling Marianne to open the package and look at what Julie had sent. Marianne kept telling her mom that it wasn't addressed to her and she shouldn't open it. Her mom kept persisting, and finally Marianne opened the package. When she had taken out the material, she saw a printed copy of a previous excerpt from a popular publication. On the side, it said, "Faith first, family second, and business third." When Marianne saw that it inspired her to quickly look through the other inserts of information, and in an instant knew that this was something she wanted to do. She wasn't sure when or how, but she thought she was going to try. Her mother kept telling her she would be good and she could do this, and she would buy products from her. There was more, too. Marianne had a picture in her memory of skincare jars of cleansing cream and masks sitting on the sink in their mom's home where they had grown up. It was from her little sister Joy, who had attended a cosmetic skincare party in high school and bought the products. Marianne kept seeing connections in her mind of real situations that led her into joining the business. Marianne felt grateful for this connective type of memory. She had always felt bad because she thought her siblings had not been very supportive of her career choice. Her sisters used plenty of makeup, that was for sure. They just didn't buy it from her. For many years, Marianne had felt very hurt by this and believed that if her sisters would only let them show the products to them and talk to them about her dream, that would be so nice. They wouldn't. For whatever reasons, they did not want to hear or be involved in any way. Her sister Karen had gone so far as to tell her she hated the company. Marianne knew that there were other implications. Why hate something you didn't even know about after all? Maybe certain companies were a place some could express anger that they did not know how to express directly. Could that be? It certainly seemed to make more sense. Anyway, now that Marianne had seen the connections that her siblings really had played a part in her making the decision to be a part of her skincare and cosmetics entity, she could let go of her resentment and hurt feelings. Another positive step in the direction of her calling. Marianne felt joy and sadness as she realized the importance of this revelation. God was in charge, and it was for good. Remember the Bible story of Joseph and his brothers. Joseph had a dream too. Chapter 8. Trish called her friend Sophie again on Tuesday evening. It had been a while since they had talked to one another, and Trish wanted to keep in touch. "Hello," answered Sophie. "Oh, Trish, how wonderful to hear from you. How's it going? I was thinking about you lately." "Yes," said Trish, "I was thinking of you too, so I called to say hi and see what you've been up to." "Oh my," said Sophie, "everything's great. I just started writing a book, can you believe it?" "Great," said Trish. "Tell me more." "Well," answered Sophie, "it's about friendships and women and how we have all this stuff going on in our lives, but how friendships, especially with other women, keep us going forward in our lives. It's also somewhat autobiographical. I've always felt that I have come through a lot in my life, and I like to share my own story with others to give people hope and encouragement." "Wow," said Trish. "I think that is so super. I know that you've always been a good friend to me. I'm in awe of what you've been through in your life. I commend you for taking this step and following through with something you believe is so important." "Well," Sophie said softly, "thank you for being so supportive. I have to admit I don't know where the book idea, will actually end up. I mean, I have started so many different projects, it seems. I get these ideas, they seem really great, and I start, and then I just kind of leave them unfinished, and I feel sad saying all this, but it's how I've been. Trish jumped in. But Sophie, wait a minute. Look at all of the stuff you have finished. You finished college at an age when most don't even want to think about doing something so complex. You've raised a beautiful daughter that is educated and employed and happy and well adjusted. You have a successful marriage after one that ended sadly. You've started building your faith and kept moving forward with that. So, in my opinion, there are many acts that you've started and completed. I think that being an idea person presents one with so many different choices sometimes that to finish everything that one begins is just not reality, nor does it need to be. Well, thank you for saying that, Trish. I really do appreciate your input. So tell me about you and what is new in your life. Trish began to tell Sophie of all the great new things in her life, and they ended the conversation with the promise of getting together before too many more months passed. It was nice to reconnect with people and be supportive of others' efforts to move outside their comfort zones. Trish knew only too well how hard it was to finish projects when you were so excited in the beginning, but after that it wasn't always so fun putting down the substance of what was going to move the project along. Maybe this was because it was a part that was new, yet not new. By this, she meant that doing a project from a new perspective or with a new goal in mind was fun, but when it came to doing the part that was going to result in a new outcome, that was the scary part. The middle was the crucial part. The beginning already had some familiarity about it, so you could begin okay. The next steps were the creating and doing parts to see what fits and what doesn't, and this is where the unknown comes into play. It was like this in doing an art project. Sometimes when you started, you had such freedom. You could choose your medium and your paper or canvas or whatever was your surface or base if you were painting or drawing. Then you chose a color or brush or pencil or chalk and you started making your marks. But then, where to go from there? What was it you wanted to create, or did you even know? Even if you had an idea or some definite form or visual image, it was still going to be in your hands to have it move towards what you were imagining. You were put to the test in this phase more so than in the beginning. You had to follow through with your plan and tweak and revise and seek more help when you came to this middle part. So, to stop or give up or abandon the idea was not unusual at this point. This was where it was difficult to know if it was rationalization or reality. Yes, Trish knew about this step because she too had left many a project undone or moved to finish some, and that was life. The tricky part was to be able to keep moving on and believe that you were making a difference by what you did choose to finish or leave behind. Today, Trish was going to go for a walk and just let herself relax. She'd not really been working so hard physically, but mentally. Sometimes she just needed to be outside and let nature surround her with its beauty and magic. Yes, it really was a sort of magic. The beauty of the sky and the changes the clouds brought with swirls and shapes of the wind blowing, the breezes in the many different trees. The sounds of birds chirping and singing away was for Trish very special, and she loved being outside. Chapter 9. Classes were great at Winston College. The classes were relatively small, and Trish was getting to know the students. There was one boy named John who was very quiet and did beautiful work. Trish had talked to him a couple of times. He was not totally sure about what he wanted to do with his art, but he certainly loved it. That was clear in his work. He had created several different pieces already. He did a still life for the values piece that was an old lamp with some books on a table and a wine bottle with candlesticks. The shading was quite nice, and the colors he chose were pleasing and gave a sense of softness to the piece. You got the idea looking at the composition that it was a place you might like to sit and contemplate your day or spend a nice time having a conversation with a friend. That was the exciting aspect about all the different students and their work. What they might communicate through their drawings and paintings gave you another picture of who they were and what was important to them. It was just as valuable for them to be able to realize that sometimes characteristics of ourself might show up in our work that wouldn't necessarily be evident in a verbal conversation. Trish had been away from her work for a long time, her artwork and being creative for the value of creativity. She was finding it more difficult than she'd previously thought it would be to get back into her own work. Her life was different now than it had been when she was painting and drawing before. Oh, she still did a piece now and again, but it wasn't the same as being into working on her art as it had been before. She decided that it was just another time of looking and seeing what did she want to create, or was there something else she preferred more. For many years, Trish had the idea that it wasn't necessary to have a block when it came to deciding what to paint or draw. Trish believed you just started and something would materialize. Now, though, she was thinking maybe it was important to go at beginning a different way. Oh, what the heck, she said to herself. Enough analyzing the situation. Just let it go. That was another new thing with Trish lately. She kept getting the thought to just let it go. She liked this thought and felt that it was very helpful. She kept thinking it was all a part of getting older. As you passed certain numbers in the age game, it just didn't make sense to keep hashing over the same old stuff. Life goes on, and I want to go on too, not be stuck in a problem or a certain pastime. I want my life to matter, and I want to be current. Trish felt good about where she was psychologically with herself, and she felt like she deserved it. After all, her life hadn't started out all roses by any means. She had had lots of difficulties to overcome from her childhood, and she felt that she had done a very good job. Of course, many years had passed from when she was a child, but so what? There were many adults who never got past some of that early family dysfunction. Trish was grateful that she had. It had been a lot of hard work, and at times she didn't always know if she was making progress or not, but she kept trying, and then she would see that yes, something was different, something was better than it had been, and then she would know that yes, she had been making progress. After many years of this, it was clearer to her that it was a process to heal from past issues, and she trusted in the process most of the time. When she wasn't sure, she would still do what she believed was best for herself, and it usually paid off. Certainly, one's own participation in their life made the most significant difference, and faith, too. That was a biggie for Trish. She wasn't always sure of the details, but she did believe that there was something larger than her that was meant for good. That is what she went with. Being sure wasn't always the case, and that was okay. Chapter 10. Michael Johns called on Tuesday to say he was having a few friends over for an impromptu dinner, and he would love it if she would join them. Trish was glad to be invited and told Michael yes, she would love to come. "Shall I bring anything?" she asked. "Oh, no," said Michael. "I'm grilling chicken and steaks. Everything's going to be ready when my guests arrive. My mother is in town, and she made her delicious potato salad and her special 7-layered salad. My brother Jim and his wife are coming too. They live in the area, and they're bringing chocolate fudge brownies, so we're all set." "I look forward to meeting more of your friends and your family. What time shall I come over?" she asked. "Come around 5:30, and we'll have an iced tea, and I'll introduce you to everyone," he said. "See you then," answered Trish. Trish was excited as she chose a lavender summer skirt with a matching top. She loved meeting new people, and this evening promised to have that aspect. Off she went to Michael's, and was there in only 10 minutes. He lived in a brick and stone Tudor-style house on a beautiful brick street lined with several oaks and maple trees. Trish parked her car in front of the house and walked up the flower-lined steps to his front door. She rang the bell, and Michael was smiling as he hurried to open the door for her. "Hello," he said, as he offered his hand to welcome her into the foyer. Trish greeted him with a quick hug, and they walked towards the center of the house. The inside was as inviting as the exterior, and Trish was pleased to have been included. Michael's mother came from the kitchen, removing her apron and stretching out her hand to welcome Trish. "Hello, I'm Janine. It's so nice to meet you, Trish. Michael has told me how glad he is to get to know you. Are you getting settled okay in Randall?" "Yes," said Trish. "Everyone has been so kind to me, and the town is lovely. It is a change from Florida, but I was ready to try something new." Janine introduced Jim and his wife, Pat, to Trish, and Michael introduced his neighbor, George, and his wife, Sue. Trish talked with Sue and Pat for a bit. It was refreshing to be together with others who enjoyed life and believed in building others up instead of gossiping. Trish looked over at Michael and saw him smile back as he cooked their dinner. Trish thought he looked very comfortable with grilling, and she hoped that they would be able to have a conversation later. As they sat down to dinner at the beautifully decorated dining room table, Trish was glad that Michael had called to invite her. She loved being a part of others' lives, and the thought that she had been included in a family get-together was special to her. Trish saw Jim and Michael laugh with one another, and it made her feel comfortable to know that they were close. Family had always been important to Trish. She wasn't particularly close to her family, but that didn't mean she didn't care. She cared very much. Trish's father had died the year that Trish was graduated from high school. They did not have much of a relationship at that time. Really, they never had much of a relationship at any time. Trish thought about that. She considered that maybe as he became sick and knew that his life was on a precarious course, he wanted to change that situation between them, but for Trish, it was too late. She had been hurt too much by his previous mistakes, and she couldn't take the chance of being hurt more. Not everyone in the family had seen the situation the same, but what could she do? It was her life, and she knew the pain that she had endured. If he didn't want to treat her the horrible ways that he did have a choice. That is what Trish realized over the course of time. He may not have had the proper training to be a good parent, but there comes a time when people realize they can do something different. They do not have to parent the way they were parented. It still hurt as Trish was remembering. Trish brought herself back to the present and laughed with the others as light-hearted conversations filled the air. Trish was glad she was here. Chapter 11. The next day, as Trish got ready for class at Winston College, she thought of the nice evening she had shared at Michael's. His family was very kind to her, and it was thoughtful of Michael to invite her. After dinner, they'd shared a few minutes of conversation before everyone began picking up the table, helping with the cleanup. The food was very tasty, and Trish hoped that they would be able to get together again soon. Classes at Winston College were short that day, as a strong storm was building in the area, and students left right after lunch. The college didn't want to have anyone be stranded, and they knew that an extra couple of hours from the day's agenda wouldn't make a big difference to the students or the teachers. Trish was fine with ending sooner. She had a couple of projects to go over and used the time to do so. She stayed in her class area as others left the campus and went about her work. As Trish was working on her next project for the students, she heard a few rumbles of thunder and noticed the room getting darker, although it was only 2 p.m. She closed her notes and went to the window, where she saw fast-moving clouds building and the darkness increasing. She wasn't terribly frightened, just a bit cautious about standing next to the window area of her classroom. This part of the building had many windows, so that the light was great for painting. Trish quickly gathered her belongings and stepped out of the room. Just as she came into the hallway, she saw Michael leaving his classroom down the corridor. "Michael," she called. "Oh, Trish, you're still here too. I was wondering if any other students were in the building. I thought all the faculty had left too," he said. "The storm has been gathering some strength, it looks like. We better make a run for it or we're going to get soaked." Without hesitating, they hurried and left the building. They each went to their own cars, and the clouds let go with a torrential rainstorm. The wind had died down, and even though the rain was coming down heavily, they each started off towards their homes. Trish was glad to get in her driveway and up the steps just as another round of rain came pouring down. The storm was moving quickly, and she was grateful to be home. Her phone rang, and she answered out of breath as she reached the door of her apartment. "Michael, yes, I'm inside. All is well here. Thank you for being so thoughtful to check with me. I'm good and wet, but otherwise just fine. I'll see you at school tomorrow." Trish hung up and decided on a quiet ending to her day of reading and maybe doing a drawing in her free time this evening. A light dinner was on the agenda, and then she would get her art materials out. As she changed into dry clothes, she thought of Michael calling to see if she had made it home safely. He was very considerate to check with her. Trish liked that he cared about her safety. It meant a lot to her when people were thoughtful. Trish suddenly realized that she was happy that Michael had showed his concern. It had been a long time since she had given much thought to another man. After her husband had been killed, Trish just thought of her life alone and didn't really ever consider that she might be involved with someone to think about and wonder what could come from caring. Trish was glad she was getting to know Michael. Chapter 12. As Trish began to work on her art, her phone rang and she stopped to respond. It was Marianne calling to say she was waffling again on her goals and wondered if Trish could talk a bit. Of course, said Trish. I'm happy to talk with you. Well, said Marianne, I had set my goal, and then as a week or so went by, I decided I would change the date for debuting for directorship because I knew I needed more time to meet my goal. I knew when I set the goal I was pushing it a lot, but I thought it would be okay. I'm glad I changed the date. I've been working and I've seen some results. I think it's hard to keep going when everything isn't happening right away. Now I'm beginning to see that that is part of my problem. In the past, when I didn't see immediate results, I would get discouraged and quit, then gradually lose my belief. Now I see that I need to keep going. Obviously, if I'm seeing some results, if I keep going, I will see more results by continuing on. Wow, I really needed to share all of that. Trish answered quietly and thoughtfully. Marianne, I'm so honored that you call me and share with me your thoughts. I know this is very important to you, and I value our friendship. I think it takes a lot of courage on your part to share something so close to your heart. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of your dream. Trish, you mean a lot to me. Without you to hear me and encourage me, I don't know if I could keep moving forward with as much confidence. I think I would seek someone out to listen to, and I do appreciate that you've been there for me, are there for me. It means a great deal to me. I think as women, we need other women to validate who we are sometimes. I don't want to sound dependent on anyone, but come on. I'm not in this world by myself. I think God had a great plan when he included people in the picture. Don't you? Oh, yeah, said Trish. A very great plan for us all. I wonder why some people always know what it is they're meant to do and others struggle so much. In fact, said Trish, I've been thinking about this for a long time. That is, why struggle? I believe there's some value in struggling, such as the analogy of a caterpillar coming out of its cocoon to turn itself into a butterfly that is so special and unique. Without that struggle, there would be no butterfly. But for us as humans, there must be a fine line between struggling to become and struggling to live or just get by in life. There's a difference, and sometimes we cross the line between giving in and settling for the lifestyle of struggle, I think. As you tell me about yourself and your dream to become a director in your field and how many times you have not reached your goal, you keep coming back to the drawing board, so to speak, and continue your path towards your dream. In your efforts, you've become a stronger, more independent person. At the same time, I've been thinking, maybe we do want to have a dependence on something bigger than ourselves. And is this our relationship with God? Does God want us to be dependent on him? I think, in a way, that he does. Of course, we have heard of free will, and I think it is sometimes confusing and unclear how to make our own choices and yet be dependent on God. Yes, said Marianne, I agree with you. Being independent to make daily choices and decisions is so routine and automatic for so many of us, and the idea of being independent so against the independent woman model that it is a difficult place to be. Or is it? Maybe being dependent on God and having that relationship where we feel led and directed by God is the place to be. I don't know for sure, and I guess I'd like to know for sure. That is related to being in control, I think. But I've begun to think about the fact that struggle for me is a choice. And it is a choice that I think causes me problems. I think I feel frustrated and like there is no divine plan for me when I'm struggling. I cannot seem to make happen what I have wanted to happen for so many years, so maybe I need to give in instead of giving up. Maybe trust and resting in God is where the solution is for me. I believe that what my goal reflects is a God-given dream. I think that way back when I was looking over that printed material sent by my sister-in-law to my mom's house, that I was holding in my hands, what it was something from God. God was saying to me, you can do this, Marianne. God knew that this would allow me to be with my daughter and earn a good living and help many other women and help myself become more of who I was meant to be. Trish had been listening carefully to what Marianne had been saying and was so moved by her friend's reflection. Wow, Marianne, I think that you're a very special person, and you have so much to offer other people, especially women. I know that sometimes you've been very discouraged. I commend you for getting back up and trying again, and not only trying another round, but coming to the table with a new plan, a new perspective. That shows a lot of fortitude. Well, said Marianne, reflection is one thing, but keeping on is definitely another. I hope that I will make my goal soon because it gets harder. Gets harder to keep believing. That's another issue I've been working on, believing that I will reach my goal. I think that you will, Marianne. I know you have what it takes. Keep going. I believe in you and your dream, said Trish. Marianne said goodbye and they would talk again soon. Trish wanted to go for a walk. It was a beautiful late afternoon, and she wanted to get outside to enjoy the rest of the daylight. She really didn't know what Marianne was going through with wanting to be in a certain position in her company for so many years and not attaining that goal. It would be very hard to keep going. What about all the reasons for stopping? She decided Marianne's purpose must be very strong. That was something really special, especially today, when everything was about instant gratification. Wow, what a commendable feat for Marianne. Trish wished the very best for her friend. Chapter 13. Trish was up early, and as she was having breakfast, she thought about her students and how much they were willing to share about themselves and how friendly they were. This was a different view than she was used to in thinking about young people today. On the news, there were so many stories about values not being important anymore. Trish didn't really see that in her students. She felt that they were a very caring person, and the world mattered to them. They had seen a lot of change in their own lives, and taking so much in within a few years that they'd been alive was staggering, really. So many of her students had come from broken families, blended families, and parents who were up to their eyeballs in confusions about life. Life today was a lot more complicated than in some previous generations, or was it? Maybe just different. One thing Trish knew was that she wanted to keep believing in getting involved and being involved in life as she got older instead of getting out the rocker as she viewed her parents' and grandparents' generations. Trish thought about Sophie writing a book. Wow, that was something. Sophie was a really special person, thought Trish. Maybe I should give her a call. Sophie wasn't answering, so Trish left a message and went on about her day. Living in a different city was fun. It wasn't really a city, so to speak, but a relatively small town with a lot to offer. The downtown area had 3 places to eat, and there was a library close to everything, and then just a bit further, the community college. All in all, a very nice place. Trish was happy here. At school that day, she decided to tell the students a little bit about her own art and how it had all progressed. She told them about being in love with finger painting as a toddler. She had thought about this many times and decided she was probably 3 at the time. Her parents had friends in the house next door, and they had a boy her age, and they played together. When his mom got out the paints and paper for finger painting, oh my, Trish was so happy. She told them about loving the swirls she would make with her fingers, and the way the medium was so smooth and beautiful to her. This was definitely a good memory. When her little friend was 4, his family moved away, and finger painting was no more for Trish. She didn't remember doing much with art after that. Oh, there were the coloring books, and that was fun. Then a project in grade school around 2nd or 3rd grade, but not much else to report. As Trish was telling the kids about herself, it seemed clear to her that losing her friend to a move was also losing her access to finger painting, and that was probably a big loss to her. She had thought before about losing her young friend, but she hadn't thought about losing her art time. It was fun sharing about herself, and she didn't want to bore them, although who knew if others saw the information as interesting as she did or not. Another time, and she could tell more about herself and her own art history. As the students left, she felt a bit sad, thinking about the days when she loved to paint and play with her friend. It had been a big loss to her, she knew, about her friend, but she just hadn't connected the dots about losing her opportunity to paint. She wondered if that was the reason she had not studied art as a young person. Maybe the loss of something so near and dear to her was just something she did not know how to deal with, and so buried the real feelings she had for it. She suspected this was very likely, and even thought of how she was with her own art through the years, and up until she decided to major in art. Wow, interesting how life is. Inside, she felt a strong connection to being an artist. She was glad to be in a position now to be able to do her art as well as teach it to others for whom it was important. Chapter 14. The phone rang as Trish was sitting in her living room. "Oh, hello, Michael. How nice to hear from you. What's going on? Dinner? That sounds nice. Where and when?" "See you then," said Trish, and hung up the receiver. Trish was happy Michael called. There were a group of teachers going out for Mexican food, and Trish was going along. She showered and changed her clothes to something she felt very comfortable yet elegant wearing. It was casual, but she loved feeling pretty and confident about how she looked. Looks were somewhat important to Trish. She knew she wasn't what was considered gorgeous or a knockout beauty, but she felt attractive and believed that she made the most of her appearance. She believed that we all play a part in how we present ourselves to others, and Trish believed in doing everything she could to make her presentation a good one. The restaurant where they were meeting was just outside of town on a rural road, and Trish started out to make sure she was on time. She loved how the evening sky was so blue, and as the sun was setting there were streaks of purple and pink swirled into the feather-like clouds. The summer was one of her favorite times of the year. The colors of the grasses and flowers all in bloom, the brighter, longer days, and the early rising of the sun. Trish missed living in Florida. She wasn't sure how she would be in the winter. "I guess I'll just have to wait and see," she thought. Just as she arrived at the restaurant, so did Michael. They each got out of their cars and hugged one another quickly, and with a brief kiss on each other's cheek. "So," said Michael, "I'm glad I caught you. I wasn't sure about last-minute plans for everyone, but it looked like it worked out pretty well." They walked into the restaurant just as 4 more of the group arrived. Michael told the hostess there would be more joining the group, probably around 10 or so altogether, and they went to be seated. The restaurant was a nice size and simple terracotta colors with bright aqua and yellow as accents. It was very pleasant. Michael introduced Trish to some of the other staff, and everyone seemed nice and eager to welcome Trish. Most of the teachers knew Michael and each other. There was one lady named Rebecca that had started teaching at the college this summer also. Trish had heard mention of her, but hadn't talked to her yet. They all ordered food and beverage and began conversations with each other. Trish felt comfortable, and sharing with others wasn't a problem for her. Michael talked to her as well as the other teachers, and Trish noticed he kept smiling at her and seemed to want to converse with her more, but in a group, it's important to include everyone. Trish didn't want to seem rude to anyone by only talking to Michael, so she made it appear that she was interested in some of the conversations when she really wanted to be in a conversation with Michael too. This was probably the first time that both of them had realized this, and it would be interesting to see what happened in the future. That was what Trish was thinking anyway. She was usually pretty good at reading other people, and this seemed quite clear to her. She wondered why Michael was always inviting her places with so many others around. Maybe he felt more comfortable that way himself. She'd have to ask him sometime. For now, she would enjoy herself and be a little bit happy that their relationship was moving forward. Chapter 15. The next day came quickly, and Trish hurried down the stairs on her way to class. Sally, Trish's landlady, was tending her garden in the front lawn as Trish opened the screen door. "Well, hello there," said Sally, arms up in the air to push back a lock of hair falling in her face. "It's nice to see you. I know it's been a busy summer for you. How do you like the college?" Trish smiled as she answered, "It is really a great place. I have met so many other teachers, and my students are wonderful. I was hoping it would be like this. Your garden is lovely. I'm very happy living here, too. I'm glad that you are," said Sally. "Have a nice day." Trish enjoyed gardening, too. She would have loved to spend some time telling Sally all about gardening in Florida, but she had to get to class. Maybe later there would be some time that they could have a conversation. Trish hoped so. After all, hadn't she been going on to herself about the importance of friendships, and here she had been in town for a couple of months and very little time to spend talking to her landlady, Sally. Trish decided that she would make time. That was what it took after all, making time, choosing to do certain things like building relationships and talking with others. The classes at her college were all about getting her students to see that ideas were valuable and to share them, so important. Many of her students had grown up in schools that didn't encourage freely thinking on one's own, more about memorizing what someone else had discovered. Trish thought this was a big problem with many students because they didn't want to appear vulnerable. They didn't want to let others know that they might not have all the answers. Trish was opting to get across the information that it's okay not to know it all, and that is what learning is all about, after all. Even in art class, so many people did not want to let other people know that they may be unfamiliar with a certain technique or how to get an idea across. To Trish, this was a very valuable part of the creative process. Sometimes you didn't know what was coming next. That was part of being creative. It was okay not to have all the answers. Letting go of control was a big part of being an artist. A lot of people would be very surprised by this information. Of course, there are different kinds of art. So many folks would think that being in control of their work was of the utmost importance. Again, it depends on the piece of work and the communication behind it. Putting emotion into one's work was very dependent on letting oneself feel, and this meant not holding on too tightly. Of these were Trish's ideas, and everyone had their own take on art. That was the great thing about the subject. Many ideas could be right. One could be an individual in this field. As far as Trish was concerned, this was where value really mattered. So in order to be the kind of teacher Trish felt made a difference, Trish wanted to be open to communicating with her students. They seemed to enjoy the process, and discussions were a fun part of the day for her and her students, she believed. It was difficult to hear about elementary schools and middle schools that were cutting the art programs from the curriculum. Trish hoped to be able to impart the great importance of keeping art alive, whether it was in the classroom or in an individual's life. Art mattered, and it makes a difference in the way we live our lives. Trish ended the day with a conversation with a few of her students, bringing to their minds the importance of never giving up their own dreams and keeping on doing the activities that allowed them to be the people they were, and to see how they could evolve as they continued to follow their hearts. Chapter 16. Trish had a lot of thinking to do, and she did her thinking best by reading and relaxing. Reading her Bible and thought-provoking books were some of her favorite ways to reflect and ponder different ideas and things she might want to improve or change about herself. Trish believed in personal growth, and getting information was a big help to her. Over the last few years, Trish had begun also to see the value of interacting with others to develop ideas and even evolve as an individual. Today was so different from the days she had been a young person growing into the world. So many things were different, but some weren't. This sounds obvious, of course. The thing that was or is everything has been changing so quickly in the last few years that she felt as though she had missed something or she needed to catch up. Maybe this was part of the aging process, after all. If indeed life was more fast-paced and technology was definitely a part of most people's lives, there were parts of life to be looked at more closely. It was so common for those who were older to say, "Wow, time just flies by. The months, the days, the years, where does it go?" Trish knew that she too had been experiencing this for the last couple of years especially. Why was this? She wondered and thought that this was something she wanted to know more about. Just recently, she'd spoken to a younger friend who was finishing her master's degree. Trish had commented how quickly the 3 years of school had gone for her friend. "Oh, yeah," said her friend. "I'm glad you see it that way. My parents said the same thing. It's gone so fast." "Well, not for me," she said. "So I'm wondering, is it an age thing that time spins quicker, or what?" Trish was just about to think about some of this more deeply when she heard her phone ring, and she quickly looked around for her phone. "Oh, yeah. Hello," she answered. It was Mary Ann. "How nice to hear from you. What's going on?" Mary Ann was wondering about coming to visit Trish. "How wonderful," said Trish. "I'd love to see you. I have a break coming up next weekend and for the first 3 days of the week. Classes are finishing. I'm so glad you called. Let me know when you'll be coming and I'll pick you up from the airport. I think there's a smaller one about 10 miles from here. I think this will be great. I haven't had a guest from out of town yet. I can't wait to catch up." They hung up, and Trish was so glad that she and Mary Ann were becoming great friends. It was always nice to have someone to get to know better and to be able to share life with. Plus, it was just what she'd been thinking, that you actually evolve as a person as you share your life with someone. The next day, Mary Ann called to say she would be coming into town the next Saturday and would stay until Tuesday. They discussed the time and the airport for Trish to meet her friend, and both were excited for the visit to happen. Marianne would bring some new products for Trish, and they would enjoy their time together. Trish would love to have visited Marianne in Florida in the winter, and maybe that might still happen. After all, getting to know one another meant they could visit each other back and forth. It was late summer, and so in the Midwest the weather was still beautiful. Not too hot, but no cold yet. Trish was wondering when the change of season would come and how would she react to living in a different climate. All in all, she knew she would be okay. It was nice to have friends, and Trish knew that she was making a place for herself here in Randall, Wisconsin. She had several friends from the college, and her landlady, and a couple of the business people. Yes, it was good to have associates and friends. The rest of the week went by quickly. Trish was excited to see Marianne and spend some time getting to know her better. They had a nice relationship. Trish had met Marianne at a friend's house in Florida that they both had a relationship with. Her name was Marty. She was the librarian in the area where Trish used to live in Florida. Marty was also someone Trish hadn't kept up very well with. That was the thing about Marianne. She built relationships with people. Trish knew many people, but not in the same way that Marianne seemed to. Maybe this was something she wanted. That is to have closer relationships with others, not just casual, see once in a while, greet on the street or in a grocery store and say hi to, but real friends that you could talk to about whatever was on your mind. Were there still friends like that today, or was everyone consumed by all the other activities life offered? Trish wasn't sure. She knew that she wanted more close friendships, and that was why she was grateful Marianne had pursued her and getting to know her better. Trish saw Sally coming in the front door as she was coming downstairs to sit on the big wraparound porch. "Hey, Sally, how are you doing?" asked Trish. "Oh, just great. I was getting out some more plants for the back porch," answered Sally. "The sun comes in so strong, so I wanted to start a few now, so that when winter comes I can bring them all in the house and they'll be just fine until the spring. I love to have green growing around me all year long." "Well, that sounds like a good plan," said Trish. "I love green around me too. Is there anything I can help you carry in?" "Oh, yes, grab that bag there if you will. I have some plants inside there so the dirt wouldn't get all over my car. Thank you for being so kind. It's nice to be able to have a chat. Let's put this stuff on the back porch and go sit out front. I've got some iced tea in the fridge if you care for some." "Yes," said Trish, "that would be very nice." The two of them sat outside and sipped their tea and watched the sky getting darker blue and the sun setting far off in the distance. It was a very nice end to the day.